in here. So just tell us where you're at. We just always like to know geography. Who we've got from where is always appreciated. We'll keep the chat room and box open the entire time, so we can always chime in and do all those fun things. I know Marcy from Florida is going to be joining us. I get to pick on her because she chimed in an hour early.
Ah,
I was like, oh, but it's not for another hour.
That's all right.
So what happens with
We have
time
our own
zones,
little private
right?
webinar. Yes,
Yeah. I just always feel bad. I know when people sit there and it's like the host hasn't started it. No
I
point.
know. Yeah, exactly.
Ah,
Hi,
Jake.
Jay. Welcome to the party from Chicago.
Right. Jay, I got to come down to Chicago in a few weeks. I'm going to try that new doggy airline.
Oh,
And I'm
you
gonna,
are? You're gonna have
yep.
to report on that.
Yeah. So we got accepted to adopt a dog out of California. So we're gonna
Yeah.
take the normal airline out and then fly
Okay.
the doggy airline back.
Back. Wow.
Yeah. So we'll
That's
see how it
amazing.
goes.
Yeah, I want to know about it too and the cost of it. I mean, just is it
I'm
cost effective or
I'm
not?
justifying the cost because if I'd
Yeah,
gotten a puppy, that
yeah,
would be around 6,000.
yeah,
So I'm like, okay, if I take away the adoption fee,
yeah. All that. Plus, I mean, let's say if you had it transported even via the professional transporters, that's not cheap either, and it's still
no.
so much more stress on the dog and takes longer.
And that's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah.
So for us, we're just trying to minimize the stress
Yep. It's
of that
already a
road trip.
stressful situation, and
Yeah.
so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Stress is the name of the game. And time, time, energy,
Yeah,
effort,
yeah,
time away,
absolutely. Yeah, I get
all
it.
those good things. So,
It
all
really is.
right. So be sure that you also hit OK. We are recording this seminar. So that way you can listen to it a second time. If there's any key points that you have to pull from it, also just helps with us documenting everything. So it is 7:05. I'm going to get started. I have known Teija for the entire 12 years that I've owned my dog daycare
I
facility.
know.
But
We
Teija
have
started.
every time we see each other, just slightly bit more hair,
There,
more gray in the hair.
there you go. There you go. But yeah, so reading through your bio, you've built a successful career over the span of 30, 40 years. First dog daycare in 1990. So
Mhm.
truly a trailblazer in this industry. And you have navigated, I'm going to say, probably hundreds of thousands of sales and been a part of people's retirement and people's future in this
Yep.
industry, to say the least. And I know that I am indebted to you because during COVID, you did these great
Mhm.
webinars
Oh, thank
that
you.
kept me inspired and not,
Yeah.
putting the covers
Yep.
over my head.
Yep. Because I never wake up again. Yeah.
Right. And B, really like the value added that you brought to the industry during COVID
Thank
is
you.
truly immeasurable because there was
Thank you.
no other space to get that information. And
Mhm.
honestly, I would say probably trust in that fact. I mean, when you give
Mhm.
out information because of who you are and what you've done in the industry, truly a trusted leader. So
Oh,
without further ado,
so
everybody,
sweet.
Taya is
Thank
going
you.
to dig into some numbers and some
Okay.
acronyms
Yes.
that you are going to learn about. And if you have questions along the way, put them in the chat. We will try and answer them as we go through, especially if you have questions on a certain piece that Taya
Mhm.
talks about, where you would find those numbers or anything like that. Ask those questions because if you're thinking it, I guarantee someone else is too. And
Mhm.
it's always helpful, again, for those people on the replay even to get that
Mhm.
information. So without further ado, Miss Taya, take it away.
Thank you, Eve. Very kind, very kind. Yes, I want to reiterate, please send messages through the chat as we go on. Don't wait till the end. We're going to talk about a little bit of different sections, and often they solicit a lot of questions. And as Eve knows, when I do these live, I'm a very interactive presenter. I'm moving around here even because I like to just move around the floor and get people talking. I never know where people are at when they come to me. Some of this is it over your head, under your head, whatever. So you need to tell me because I can go deeper, I can keep it lighter, or whatever your particular situation is. So feel free to just chime in. We are going to focus on how to kind of build a business, build business value, right? You're all started pet care businesses probably for similar reasons: passion for the dog, passion for their care. Maybe your area was lacking in quality pet care. It's a lot of work. It's emotionally and physically a pretty demanding industry, but also has some immense rewards with it. Often the business side of the business kind of gets neglected a little bit because we're very busy running the ops and providing care. So my goal always is to kind of elevate that conversation a little bit, and let's just talk a little bit about business. People often start thinking about selling too late, and it's not. I always say that you don't have to run your business a certain way to sell. Like, I don't care if people ever sell. There's many ways to exit your business. You can one day just shut the doors and be done. You can give it to a manager. You can give your business to your children, family members, whatever. There's many different ways to exit it. However, as you're going along and you're working in your business, or I should say working on your business, as if you're trying to build some value in it, it makes your life easier while you own the business. You have more money. The business tends to be a little calmer. We don't have a whole lot of chaos and the drama that we sometimes experience in this industry. So, people often, if I talk about, they're like, oh, I'm not ready to sell. It has nothing to do with being ready to sell. It has everything to do with making sure when you're working and spending your 8 to 10 hours a day on the business as to what you're focusing on, and making sure that there's some reward for that at some point, whatever that is, so that you're not just staying stagnant and working hard and not creating anything bigger. So having said that, today I'm going to talk about what matters in business value. We're just going to do very short little, I'm not going to do any spreadsheets, nothing like that, but we are going to do just the really super, super low level business valuation 101. I have found that we do a lot of valuations out of here, not just for people who want to sell, but people who just want to know what their business is worth. And one of the questions on the valuation questionnaire always is, what is your expected value on the business and how did you come up with that? And I continue at times to be surprised or sometimes even shocked how people think businesses are valued. Like, they'll have half of the equation right, but the other half is completely wrong, and then they're severely disappointed. So I think the more people understand what actually affects business value, then you're a little smarter as you're running your business. So, all right. Enough on that. Yes, Eve, you already have a question?
I've counseled some people who wanted to get out of the industry, and I've also tried to purchase some of my competitors even, and what they feel the value of their business is, whether they owned the building, didn't own the building.
Nothing to do with real estate. Yeah, just the business.
It was very far off.
It's crazy.
And so the key thing I think that we small business people have to realize is that, we are emotionally attached to this, and that our emotions aren't what pays the bills, and that's not what's going to help us make sure that we have that right valuation. So
no, I love it. It's very true. And I mean, often people say, oh, I talked to my buddy and he sold this manufacturing company and this is how it was valued at. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that. And those of you who have ever looked at, especially for sale by owner, anywhere that they're trying to sell a business, it's kind of crazy how they come up with the numbers. So appreciate that. All right, let's move along. The first thing we're going to do is just talk a little bit about verbiage. And this is just a short thing. So we have two markets in where to sell your pet care business right now. We have what we call the private buyer market, and that's kind of what you see here on the green. And private buyers are individual people. They want to get into pet care, and they just want to buy a business and they want to operate it. Sometimes they're kind of new in their career, but most of the time, at least the private buyers we deal with, they have had one or two careers. They typically come out of corporate world. They have some money and they want to do something that's a passion. They might have a little rescue background. Maybe they've done some, dog training as a hobby, whatever, but there's some connection typically to pet care. And they just want to buy a business. They really just want to buy a job and make some money at it. So that is the private buyer market. And on that market, how the business is valued, it's called seller's discretionary earnings. We call it SDE. It basically is the money that's left out, and I'll show you the math here in a little bit, after everything is paid off. So it's truly discretionary earnings, but it assumes that the buyer would work the business. So typically the private buyer market assets that we call, they're closely held. They're often family businesses. There might be more than two people involved. There might be, you know, parent and a couple of kids involved in it. Very much owner controlled and operated. One of the owners is typically full-time working the business. And we're talking working in it, like answering phones and, you know, taking care of dogs and stuff. There's typically limited or no management structure. We call them lifestyle properties because most of the time they have a residence on the property. So they started out as in their community, there's a residence, they build a facility. They're typically smaller, maybe under 50 enclosures. But they're called lifestyle properties because this is truly a lifestyle for these people. And they do constitute about 90% of the facilities that are on the market to buy. So if you go to look at Biz Buy Sell or anything like that, you're going to see a lot of these, and there's residences involved. Oops, sorry about that. And these are called the private buyer market. And the private buyers, they want to buy a lifestyle property. That's what they're looking for. So again, just from the verbiage perspective, and when we get into the valuation, happy to give some commentary on this. These types of businesses are valued based on sellers' discretionary earnings. Then we have the other market is that you probably hear a lot of hubbub in the pet industry about right now, where corporations, private equity, they're all the same thing. I might use the words corporation, consolidator, private equity. They all mean the same thing. It is some kind of a larger entity that is buying up pet care businesses to put them on a called a platform. So they have a bunch of them one day and then they sell them up to a larger company. So those businesses are typically there's some management in place. The seller is either absentee or semi-absentee and more kind of delegated to the CFO role. You would not be on the floor all the time. You wouldn't be answering phones, nothing like that. You have a larger facility and there's some management structure in place. It's either a lease situation where you're leasing from a third party, or they own commercial real estate, but it doesn't have the residence on it. Sometimes we have larger facilities that still have a residence because they grew a lot, but that's a little bit of the abnormality. And we call them M&A market assets. M&A starts for mergers and acquisitions, nothing fancier than that on that. But these facilities are valued based on EBITDA. God darn it. I don't know what I do, and I keep moving on. And EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And EBITDA is actually a number that any business is valued at. So if you read Wall Street Journal and you're going to see who sold for what, it's always going to say such and such company sold for X times EBITDA. So it's a really good word to learn because the whole world pretty much evolves around EBITDA. And your business is always valued on EBITDA. The only difference between these two numbers, so that's why you can forget about the differences. When we move on with the thing, you don't have to remember, oh, what's what. The only difference is how we calculate EBITDA. If we have seller's discretionary earnings, we substitute the owner who typically works with the manager and we deduct that manager's wages, and now we have EBITDA. So the math is pretty easy. Don't even worry about thinking it. Just go through the whole thing and you don't have to remember everything about that I said, but most of the time EBITDA is kind of what controls your entire business. All right, any questions on this so far? I'm going to keep moving along. Just want to get the lingo right and that you understand there's two different markets. Business valuation 101, really simple. Math is simple. The devil's always in the details, and that's where it gets a little harder. It's typically something even AI can't tell us what it is. But the math in principle is simple. We take the revenues minus the expenses. That obviously equals your net income. And this is where the art of what's called recasting comes in. Once we're at this net income, we add, well, we take positive and negative adjustments out of that net income. And then that equals your EBITDA. And you will see the math here in a little bit. And then after we have a demonstrable EBITDA, we apply a multiplier. And then we calculate the business value. And the multiplier is the number, here I go again. The multiplier is the number that then dictates what your business is worth. And there's a huge range on that multiplier. And again, depending on if you're a private market asset or an M&A market asset. So that's it in a nutshell. Okay, any questions so far? All right, I'm going to keep going. We're going to talk about adjustments. So we mentioned here this adjustments. because again, this is obviously something off your tax return or P&L statement. It's the adjustments where the rubber meets the road, and there's a lot of conversations around them. Normal adjustments are positive adjustments, I should say. And these positive adjustments mean that these are what we call an add back to the net income presented in the tax return or the P&L statement. What is going on? All right. So the positive adjustments are owner wages and benefits. If the business pays for health insurance, 401k, auto insurance, anything like that, all of those will get added back. If you own the real estate, the rent that you pay to yourself or your real estate holding company gets added back, but you will see what that is substituted with here in a minute. Any amortization, depreciation, interest, and again, that's even the definition of EBITDA. And then any personal travel, vehicle, meals, basically anything that's specific to you and would not continue upon a sale to the buyer. So these are the positive adjustments. And then on the negative side, the negative adjustments, and people never think about it because everybody uses the word add back for adjustments, but really they can be positive or negative. Negative adjustment are replacement wages for all working owners. So let's, for instance, I'm doing evaluation for a company right now. We actually have 4 family members working. Well, the buyer isn't going to bring 4 family, and none of the family members want to stay on when they sell. So the buyer isn't going to bring 4 family members. So we have to do the math and figure out what would it take to backfill those people. Some of them are underpaid, some of them are overpaid. So it's all about adjusting that family wage then to what we would call a market wage for depending on what they do. So this kind of goes again, owner wages are positive add back, and then negative adjustment is if we have to replace some of those people. And this is the big thing on the rent, and I will not bore you with the math. It's a very misunderstood thing. Even let's say you own the real estate or you have a real estate holding company and the business pays rent to that company. That is first added back because it's often not fair market value. People pull numbers out of the hat, or the CPA says, oh, 120,000 a year is great, or it's the amount of the mortgage, whatever. So we first add it back, and then we calculate the actual fair market value of rent, what that business should be paying in rent. And there is a method in how to calculate that, but that is a negative adjustment. Often, I would say probably the most overlooked things, especially in facility owners who don't pay any rent. When they're doing their own calculation on EBITDA or SDE, they come up at a really high number, and then we do the valuation and they're shocked as to why our number is so much lower. Is because they never took the rent into consideration. So I just want to put a point on that. The cleanest way, if anybody here there, you own your real estate and you're not paying rent, I would highly advise you to pay rent, because that also gives you the best P&L statement, because otherwise you're probably looking at a P&L statement that's not even correct. So the rent is kind of an important piece to have in there. Yes, Miss Eve.
So my business
Mhm.
pays
Yep.
me rent.
Yeah.
And if I were to sell, but I still wanted to keep the property, do you usually recommend that we build in an automatic rent increase over the length of the...
Absolutely. Yeah. Called an escalator. Every commercial lease has an escalator. Right now, we see it about 3 to 4% annually. It does depend on the market a lot, but yes, if you own the real estate and you just want to sell your business. So those are actually interesting conversations, because if you own the real estate and I know when you call me that you want to keep the real estate, then we discuss how much rent do you want, because the rent is going to affect the EBITDA, which then affects your valuation. So it's an interesting pulley. We pull on one, it affects the other. But I'd say about 95% of our clients, they own their real estate. So we do so many scenarios around that rent and say, okay, and let's say they want to keep the real estate. We run a lot of scenarios for them because it does affect their EBITDA. And then, there's multipliers and that come in place. So you really need a good spreadsheet to figure it out.
Perfect. Yeah, because that's one thing. Like you said, a lot of people own that. So then it's always that bigger question.
Yeah, it is.
Another question is...
it takes some strategizing, and part of it also depends on how you want your money and taxes and yada yada. But yeah, it's an important part of the process.
Does selling your real estate make your business more desirable?
No, it doesn't. The business is valued 100% on its own. And yes, because of this fair market value of rent, the rent affects your business value. However, as far as, well, I'm going to take that back. I answered a little harshly. My screen always is, because 99.9% of the deals that we do is to private equity. So they don't care, because we never sell the real estate to the same company that buys the business. So there's no, it doesn't make it any more desirable than not. It's the EBITDA of the business that is the 100% driver of how desirable that business is to sell. On the private buyer market, let's say you have a lifestyle property, it affects that, because those buyers, most of the time, they want to buy the real estate. So it would have an effect on there. You'd be a little more desirable on that market because of the real estate. But it does depend on the real estate value, because on that market, they need financing, and they loop the entire business and real estate into one big fat loan. And because interest rates are high right now, then the monthly payment tends to be a little higher. And then the buyer kind of looks at it and says, okay, wow, how much is left over for me after I pay the loan payment and all the other expenses? So it gets a little bit more complicated. And then that might make the real estate more or less desirable depending on how expensive it is. So,
Great
as the
explanation.
attorneys
Great
say, it
explanation.
all depends. It all depends.
Yeah.
So I hope that explained a little bit. It's just, I just want to emphasize that when it comes to selling, what's beautiful is if you own the real estate, you have so many different ways to sell. So I'm a big proponent of always own your real estate if you possibly can. Own it, own it, own it. Because when it comes to selling, you have more options. You can do a lot more strategizing. And it's not just about the price that you get on the closing table, but it's your total yield that includes your taxes and yada, yada, yada. So it's good to own the real estate. And then we can work into, you want to keep the real estate? Should you sell the real estate? What could you do with the money? And yada, yada, if that makes sense. But on the private equity market, we sell the real estate to a REIT, and then they lease, whoever buys the business, they lease from that REIT. So it doesn't matter if you sell it or not.
Good to know.
I hope I answered that.
Yes, you
okay,
did.
probably more than she cared to know. The real estate is the most misunderstood piece. And people focus on it because we all know, we understand real estate a little better than business value sometimes, so people tend to focus on it. And I hear the most amount of myths around that whole real estate and the rent stuff. So.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if it's a house on the property,
Yeah.
like if you're living in the house and you have, the steel
Yeah.
building that you're operating out of, like that.
Yeah.
I can see where that would get really muddy. And then is it a
It
home
does.
loan or a business loan and
Yep.
zoning and
the
all
debt
that stuff?
service. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the private buyer side, just from a market perspective, has been really stagnant for the past few years in any business sale, just because of the interest rates are so high. It puts a lot of strain on the business's EBITDA when it has to pay a higher monthly payment out. So then buyers get, a little scared and yada, yada. So it's been a challenging market.
Gotcha.
Yep. All right. Other negative adjustments is any income that is generated by the owner. It's my big pet peeve. You should not be generating income, and get out of there as fast as you can if you are. Most of the time, it's grooming or training. Sometimes we see some special services, behavior work, or something like that. I've seen transport services where only the owner does the transport. But any income that's generated by the owner, because that income most likely is going to go away, especially training, because it's a specialized skill. So if you're a dog trainer and you generate 50% of your business revenue, that puts you in a high risk situation from a selling perspective. Grooming, we can sometimes make a case for, but we all know that it's challenging to find groomers, and some clients will leave because they're typically attached to the groomer. And if it's the owner, the buyer just sees a pot of money walking away with that person. So get out of income generation services, just hire people and you work on being the CFO. Any expenses that are expected to increase upon a sale, they're all a negative adjustment. The most common one is if you are in a leased space, you don't own the real estate, it's a third-party lease. Landlords know when they have leverage, and I don't care how great your relationship with them is. Now, when you come to selling, that often changes, and they will want to raise the rent. And that unfortunately affects the EBITDA, because what I have highlighted here is that all of these adjustments are used to calculate the EBITDA the buyer will realize, because that is what they're paying for. And that might be different than what you have, might be more, might be less. But that is what these adjustments do. They basically get rid of you and all of the choices you've made. And we make these adjustments to really come up with what is the buyer's EBITDA. That is what they pay for. So if in a rented space, the lease goes up, the landlord's like, heck, I'm going to increase the rate by 25%, because all these years you've been paying, below market rent. Unfortunately, that's going to come out of your EBITDA, and it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of sellers. We've even seen cases where landlords want a piece of the selling pie. I mean, they can be quite a trip in these deals, but and I'm just using that because that's the most often the case where it's an expense that increases upon a sale. The only other one I have here is payroll. I'm going to use the valuation I'm using right now is, it's a 4-member family. A couple of them are not paid a whole lot. So once I do the payroll backfill, the payroll number is actually going to be higher than currently. So that would affect the EBITDA in a negative manner as well. Yes.
Gotcha. Terry asks, what are you seeing are the most impactful to increase the multiplier?
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes. Yep. It's coming right up. Well, I want to get the math down first. Then we talk about how do we tweak the math. Good.
There you go.
All right. Any questions on the adjustments? We typically have a few people like, what about this? What about that? Again, positive adjustments, anything that's direct benefit to you personally and will not continue after the sale. It's all about this yellow line here. So positive and negative, what's the buyer going to realize?
How do you handle prepaid packages?
So whatever prepaid packages you have on the books on the date of closing, that is credit to the buyer. It's actually on the settlement statement. So we work hard with our clients in making sure the database is clean. I have seen 10-year-old packages in there that obviously the dog's dead, long gone, whatever. So we adjust all those out. We do a lot of database cleanup right before closing. Because otherwise it's all credit to the buyer. So it's good to check on your database every now and then to make sure that there's nothing old, but that is credit because you got the money, they provide the service.
Right.
So that gets credited to them. Seller gets all the boarding, daycare, whatever revenue through closing night. There's like a big line through that closing date.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Perfect.
we're good?
We're good.
All right, moving along on the adjustment. So just a quick math. If the net profit or loss on the income statement or tax return, let's say it's 120,000, positive adjustments between the owner's salary, whatever else is 60,000. We have negative adjustments of minus 50,000. In this case, the EBITDA would be 130,000 if I kept it there. So that's how it's again super simplified. But my main teaching here is that it's not add backs, it's positive and negative adjustments because it can go by both ways. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. This is how the EBITDA affects your business. It is the value matrix of your business. It is honestly the only thing that your business is valued on. And the next slide I'm going to show gives you a little better idea on it. It feeds the growth of your business because it's actual cash. While you own the business, it's literal cash in your bank account. So it affects your ability to obtain financing. Whoa. I do not know what I'm doing. If anybody smarter than me could tell me, I try to even keep my hand off the mouse. When you go apply for financing, let's say you want to grow, you want to buy a new business, you want to buy the real estate, the bank will actually calculate your EBITDA and they have certain ratios that they're looking for to make sure that you're quote unquote positive cash flow producing company. So the EBITDA affects a lot of things. So it is the financing one, again, actual cash in your bank account, and it obviously aids in building your retirement portfolio because when you go to sell, there's really nothing else that matters than that number. Your entire business is valued by that number. And what affects the EBITDA, this is one little slide. And at the end, I'm happy to send these slides, Eve. I can send them to you and you can pass them on or whatever you want. But I often get asked what affects it? And we are going to get to Terry's question about how we can increase things. But what I want to show here is that you have a business model, and I just consider like a big funnel, and all these things that we have here: revenue, expense control, reputation, your team, you provide excellent pet care, your SOPs, facilities, blah, blah, blah. All of this stuff goes into this big funnel on top. And at the bottom, it spits out EBITDA. So EBITDA is not just it's this or it's that, or, if my expense control is great, am I going to have a higher EBITDA than somebody else? It's all of this. It's your entire business model that gets put through the churner, and that then is whatever the EBITDA that it spits out. So it's important to know that whether you have more modern facilities or older facilities, doesn't matter. It's the EBITDA that matters. What are you doing with those modern facilities? Now, if your EBITDA is higher in an older fashioned facility, you're going to get a higher price than the shiny new object, right? So we've got to be very clear on these things, but this is what affects it. So if you really want to look at what to focus on, it's these things. And I'm going to show you a little scorecard here in a little bit that also shows you what are the things. It's in 4 quadrants as to what exactly affects EBITDA, what to focus on. Any questions on this? Make sense? All right. So here we go, Terry. Value drivers. So what brings up? So when I say value drivers, these are the things that will increase the multiplier. I will say that the number one dictator of a multiplier is the amount of EBITDA you're selling. If you have $300,000 in EBITDA, you're going to have a lower multiplier than if you're generating 500,000. If we're selling $1 million in EBITDA, it is going to generate so much action from a lot of companies that the multiplier is going to go up. We sell 1.5 million in EBITDA, the game gets very, very exciting. So it's those things that affect the EBITDA. So when we talk about multipliers, it is never, ever, ever the same. It depends on the amount of EBITDA, how much is the company buying, and also on your model. And I'll get to that in a little bit. And the model is really demonstrated in the margin of the EBITDA. So how much of your revenue actually goes down through the funnel and how much of it ends up in that EBITDA. So those are the things that affect the multiplier. It's never, ever the same. All of you here on the call right now, if you were to go on the market, you probably all get a different multiplier depending on a lot of things. The things that increase the value of the business is obviously revenues, and they're continuously increasing. And I know we're in a little bit of a static period right now in pet care, so at least preventing things from slowing down or going into the negative from a year-over-year revenue perspective is super helpful. And if you're able to increase revenues, then you become more desirable just because you're able to increase the revenues. Several revenue streams, always better than one. Yes, Miss Eve?
So how far back are they looking at our books? Because
Great, good question.
COVID's in there, right? So like that just...
Yeah. So we look at 3 years. However, the trailing 12 months, or what we call the TTM period, counts the most, because that's the most closest period of the business. And trailing 12 months is literally 12 months going backwards. So let's just assume it's end of September, which it is. So that period right now would be October 1st of last year through today, end of September of this year. So the last 12 months, sometimes also known as LTM, last 12 months, trailing 12 months, TTM, that's what counts the most. So when we do processes and companies bid on our client's business, they always bid based on that TTM. Make sense?
It does.
Good. They do, and we all look for the reason we get the 3 years, because we look for trending, right? We see, are your revenues going up, down, or sideways? Has your advertising costs go up or down? Is your profitability, or are your margins higher or lower? What's payroll doing? So it's the trending that's being looked on the 3 years, but the TTM counts as the value. Okay. All right, so several revenue streams. At an absolute minimum, you have to have overnight and daycare. Nobody's they're excited, but having a single revenue stream is a risky business proposition, and it's no different than your stock market portfolio, like diversify. So at a minimum, those two, and then if you can add a few more to it, that's fabulous. Value drivers, labor, as we know, is our biggest nemesis anymore. So the more you can keep your payroll below 40% of revenue, that increases your value a lot. Especially if I have two assets on the market and one's at 53% labor and the other one's at 45, that 45 or even lower is going to get more attraction and it's going to get a higher multiplier because the model is more efficient. Yes.
So at conferences, as we're chatting with people,
Yep.
one of the things I hear is, oh, my payroll is really low, but I don't pay myself.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. Thank you. The payroll really needs to be all in. What does it take to run your business? So either you are paying yourself, let's say you're a full-time worker on the floor, you access a GM or whatever, you should be paying yourself a market rate. So basically, if you were replaced by somebody, then you would be able to get your caliber of a person at that same rate. Otherwise, again, you're looking at financial statements that are deceitful to you. You're not looking at real numbers, which is not good for business decision making. So yes, if you are not paying yourself at all, you should be. And I know there's different legal entities. So let's say your partnership and you're like, hey, I don't, my CPA said just takes distributions. That's fine, but somewhere there needs to be an adjustment made in your books that you're showing that full payroll ratio. So if you're working full time and you're looking at, oh, my payroll's 40%, your payroll's not 40%. You need to add your own wages to it, and then that's your true payroll ratio.
There you go. Ooh, this is a good question.
All right.
What if buyer is going to provide less benefits to employees? Is this both an add back and an EBITDA adjustment?
Yes, it would be. It would be a buyer specific benefit, but I will say that never happens because the buyer couldn't buy the business. Every employee would leave. If anything, well, I'll talk up both sides here. So let's say you provide really good benefits. If you're talking to a company that says we're not going to provide those benefits, and you're like, well, I want the EBITDA add back on it, I would not sell to that company. I mean, it just shows extremely poor business practices. Your employees will leave. Like it's just the death kill of that business. So buyers don't do that. They're not even going to buy they're not going to pay a low level valuation on a business knowing that they're just going to lose it because they take the benefits away and then the employees walk, right? So that's that side of it. What we see most in this industry is that, especially again, we deal mainly with PE, they bring benefits in that our clients, either we have clients that provide fabulous benefits, so they always match them at a minimum. They call it keeping people whole, that employees are never, ever negatively affected by a sale. So they either match our clients' benefit packages, even if they're better than theirs, and then often our clients' packages are not quite as robust. So then they bring in, so it's an improvement on the employees. The cost difference, though, is not a negative adjustment. So let's say my client right now pays $100,000 a year on benefits, and the company coming in is going to spend $150,000. They're not going to knock that $50,000 out of the EBITDA. Does that make sense? It's an interesting question because I always think, where did it come from, right? Because we just don't see that. My clients would never sell to a company that would jeopardize their employees' benefits. I mean, it would just be a deal killer before they were even out of the gates.
Yeah, and that's, that's also one thing, like from an emotional standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, we want our employees to stay on and be
Yes,
happy and all those things too.
absolutely.
So,
These people made your business what it is. There's
right.
no way you could have done it by yourself. So it would not be the ethical or nice thing to do to sell to a substandard company. Yeah, I can't even think of a company that has ever even proposed that to me. Now, whether it's proposed privately, I don't know, but not through the process we run. Never, ever, never. It's always
Well, then I would say majority of them are on the right track. So,
yep, we hope so. And if there's somebody's not out there, I'd love to hear about it.
There you go.
I'd love to hear about it because I even feel myself getting upset about it because my clients would never sell to that. So Anyway.
Right.
All right, so value drivers, back to the positive things here. So again, revenue, multiple revenue streams, keep your payroll under 40%. And there's a little bit in the end that, we circle back to this labor, because I could talk about the labor forever. Modern updated facilities are a value driver. We all know where the consumer is moving. So if you have really old-fashioned facilities, chain link fencing, those kinds of things, you're going to have to spend a little CapEx on it. Obviously, especially PE, they love high density geographic locations because there's just many more clients. And then EBITDA margin should be 25% or higher. So these are the value drivers. So let's say your EBITDA number is, let's say you have 400,000 in EBITDA, your margin is 15%. I have $400,000 of EBITDA in another company, their margin is 25%. Even though the EBITDA number is exactly the same, the cash flow we're selling is the same, the one at the 25% margin is going to get a higher multiplier because the business model is better. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Any questions on this so far? Gonna keep going along here. All right, value detractors, static declining revenues, those are always a concern. If your labor cost is over 45%, just because the margin is so greatly affected. If you offer a lot of complicated, unique service offerings, they tend to be a little value detractors because they're often tied to an owner or very specific things, and they're hard to replicate and scale. Outdated facilities that require some CapEx, remote locations simply because there's not a big population base. So they kind of feel that the growth of the business is always limited. If there's any zoning or land use issues or limitations, there's number of if the dogs are capped at a certain number, especially if the number is low, if there's any rules restricting operations, anything like that, they tend to be a little bit of value detractor. And again, that margin, I keep mentioning the margin. So if your EBITDA margin is low, it just demonstrates a poor business model and will take some value away from you.
So when you're talking that zoning land use issues, so if somebody has a conditional use permit.
Yep, that's not a problem at all.
Okay.
80% of the deals we do have something. Special use permit, conditional use permit, variants, different municipalities use different terms. That in itself is not a problem at all. It has to be transferable, and 99% of the time they go what we call with the land, and they are transferable. So nothing needs to happen in a closing process. They're not attached to the business, they're attached to a piece of land. But some of them, we sometimes see that they cap number of dogs, like those shall never have more than 50 dogs on premises at one time.
Right.
If there's rules restricting operations, like dogs can't be outside, they have to be outside, they can only be there from, I don't know, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., anything like that. So those are what we look for, but the subs or the variances by themselves are not a problem whatsoever.
Perfect.
Okay, very common. Appreciate the question. All right, so here's kind of a scorecard. I always say if there's two things you want to take out of this thing, print this page out, and then the one that talked about the EBITDA, what it comes in. So this is what really affects your multiplier. The financials, the top left quadrant is the most important one. Like 75% of your value is going to come out of here. Kind of the same stuff we already talked about. I did add, having clean financials. Clean financials just show the story better with little less risk. No personal expenses, quit doing that. Buyers want to see a clear growth trajectory. Obviously, they want to buy at a certain amount. They want to sell at a higher amount at some point. Having management in place, supervisors, leads who do the firing, hiring, coaching, no owner dependency. That's kind of a biggie, especially in the early stages of pet care. It's okay for the business to be dependent on the owner. Typically, the owner is the one who brings in the clients, has the relationship, and that's how you build the business in the beginning. However, you need to get out of that as fast as you can, because if there's owner dependency, the buyer sees it as a risk factor that when they buy the business, a lot of the clients will go away because they had a relationship with you versus having a relationship with the business and the brand. Your role should be limited to the back office, CFO, CEO, and have some labor control systems in place that your managers can use to keep your payroll under 40%. On the services side, already mentioned several revenue streams. Your customer base has to be consistently growing, which comes into the operations side. You should have a sales and client acquisition process in place. You're losing clients all the time, so you got to make sure you're feeding that pipeline at all times. Reviews do matter. So the higher your reviews are, the better it is. Having an established and recognized brand in the community is certainly a value driver. From the operational side, high quality pet care matters tremendously. Efficiency in operations, because again, it brings our labor costs down, having the client acquisition process. And then those famous SOPs that everybody hates. Everybody knows they should have them, and everybody hates doing them. I can't preach enough about SOPs. Please help me, Eve. I've said that so many times. Get your SOPs in order.
Correct. And
Yes.
Dog Handler Academy sells my SOPs.
Love
So
it. Done
it's a
and
way
done. You have
way to get you
zero
started,
excuse.
right?
Absolutely none. I cannot stress that enough. Again, SOPs show that your business can function without you. So the staff doesn't always have to go to you or to another person who has a lot of stuff in their head. And if that person were to get sick or leave, there goes the knowledge. So SOPs can keep people in the know. Employees can make their own decisions versus bothering everybody else. And kind of keeps everybody doing the same thing at the same time. So I cannot stress that enough.
100%. So you have reviews on here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be concerned about reviews also for when we sell, or looking at the
Yeah,
value?
it's a big mixed bag. I share everybody's concern about, people tend to bitch when it's negative, but companies do look at reviews. So it's never been, how should I say this? Let's say you're sitting at 3.5, but you only have 26 reviews. Nobody's going to care about that. If you have 5,000 reviews and you're sitting at 3.6, they're going to go, okay, what's going on here? And they're going to ask you more questions. They're going to read the reviews, right? So the number of reviews matters. I've never, knock on wood, we've never lost a deal because of reviews or anything like that, because most of the time they tend to be good. But they do look at it, and if it's often, if there's a negativity, there's some incident. So it's the incident that then gets discussed, whether it's a dog fight, dog got killed, whatever that might be. So then that gets discussed. But if it's a low number of reviews, and even if they're great, nobody cares. If it's a high number, high volume of reviews, and it's on the lower side, there'll be some questions. That answer
Gotcha.
your question? That makes sense.
Yeah. And it kind of ties into that high quality pet care.
Bingo.
So when you're selling and or buying, are
Mhm.
you asking for incident reports, or how do
Yeah,
you
they come
get
up in
that kind of
there's a
data?
due diligence process. Once the
Okay.
business is under contract, that's when the fun begins. And part of due diligence is you literally have to provide everything. And especially if you sell to PE, they look at everything. So yes, they will ask for all incident logs, what constitute, even if they're old, they're good, yada, yada, any lawsuits, nobody runs away from those things. Like, people don't run away just because you've been sued. But they want to know, has it been settled? Has it not? We've had
Right.
little deals where clients owned a business for 20 years, never had an incident. In the middle of a freaking transaction, dog gets killed and they get sued. So, you work through those. That's why we have attorneys. So nobody runs away from that, but you do have to show them just to get and again, if you had like a lot of low reviews and there's an issue with the pet care, they'd want to know what the issue there is.
Gotcha. So the question is, how does the reputation get valued? So you're kind of taking that mix of
Yep. Back to that little circle thing I had, it all goes in. I mean, when you really start looking at business, and like you just brought up, it's the reviews and the high quality pet care, they go together, right? They also go together with proper training of staff and having SOPs in place. I mean, everything is interconnected. You can never take this without that, because I can tell you every single one of them, how they go together.
Gotcha.
Okay, good. So how does reputation get valued? So did I answer that question, Heather?
Yes.
It all
Yep.
goes together here, right? Okay. All right. Cruising along. All right. So as far as from a asset building perspective, and it's again, I keep saying, whether you're going to sell or not, it's really not the thing, just about running a super solid business. Focusing on the numbers, having clean financials, income statement, balance sheet, making sure they're up to date. Have a good bookkeeper. If you don't like bookkeeping, don't do it. Bookkeepers are cheap. They keep your books in order. They give you reports you want. They can clean up your chart of accounts. I mean, they're just worth every penny. Labor ratio should be calculated for every pay period. I have literally clients who calculate it by the day, but it should be calculated at a minimum for every pay period, because you can make adjustments as you go along if you don't know exactly where you're at. Tracking the volume of your pet numbers, comparing to previous years to see yourself for trending. Let's say if your revenue is down for daycare, you don't know if it's less number of dogs in the building, or are they stretching their packages longer? Have you reduced your rates? Are you giving too many discounts? And you have no idea of knowing that unless you're actually also tracking how many paws do you have in the building, and always comparing into the previous year to see the trending. So you're comparing same time period, same season to the previous year. And that would be for boarding, daycare, grooming, and also average per day per service. Like how many dogs did you average in September for boarding? How many in daycare? And how does it compare to last year? Because then you also know if you want to make some changes. But do you want to increase pricing? Do you need to work on advertising and bringing more volume in, or what that is? Revenue per dog for each service. And these smaller fonts just tell you how to do the math. So you really should be knowing how much you're generating per dog for the different services, and again tracking that as well. So you can make good solid decisions. New customers, every single month go track how many new customers did we get in, because you know you're losing some every month. Revenue per square feet of the space you occupy. So, and this includes walled space only, anything under a roof. So you just take your total revenue for the month and you divide it by the square footage. And that tells you also how much revenue generating per square foot. It's a really good number when you're considering expansion. It makes it very clear quickly, should I expand or should I just maximize what I have so far? Real estate is expensive, so you want to make sure that you're maximizing your revenue out of that square footage, or using space differently, whatever it might be, to make sure that the real estate utilization is optimum. Number of Google reviews and ratings every month, and then you would get an extra bonus if you calculate your EBITDA every month.
Nice. So I'm gonna jump on your square foot piece, because I tell people all the time, do you really need an office at your facility?
Right? Love it. Like I so love it, especially because real estate has gotten expensive,
Yeah.
difficult to find because of zoning, and especially if you want to be an area where there's any people around you, it's not easy, and it's very expensive. So always look at, okay, is there anything we can do different? Storage, you're better off renting a storage unit and using that space for income producing services. So I could not agree with you more. Bingo.
Yeah. I mean, your
Totally.
office could be the cat boarding room. Could be
Exactly.
the training
Yep.
space.
Absolutely. Yep.
So many other things. So
There's
yeah,
so many things. Yep. And also kind of naturally look at where are my clients spending money? What am I good at? Am I really good in daycare and I have an expansion problem? Okay, where is some space? Where can I take some space and make more money at that service? So constantly analyzing that real estate piece, because you're paying dearly for it. So yeah, I love it. I'm not sure. And what I hear all the time, owners who have offices in the facility, you don't get anything done. You
no,
just don't.
no. I
So
built
figure
one.
that out.
I did build one. It's just that's where
Yeah.
all the crap goes, right? Like
Yeah.
all the extra stuff.
Yeah.
That's where that is. That's where the security system sits.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yep.
Yep.
In 12
All of
years,
that.
I think I've actually sat behind the desk twice.
Yeah.
And
Yep. And it's
no,
not a
it's
good waste. I mean, honestly, owners are better off renting or doing a co-working space.
yeah.
If let's say you don't have room in your house, so you just want to get out of the house, rent a co-working space. It's an add back when you sell.
Right.
And it
Right.
gets you out of the business into a professional, quiet environment. And you're not at home either, because sometimes people don't do well working from home. Just depends on your personality.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yep. Nope.
there's so many. I can walk into facilities and I'll retail. Some facilities do a fabulous job, and some, like, it's just a little rack of dusty collars. Like literally, I can take that square footage and do something else with it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's a lot of things where I have seen that, yeah, you could make more money. And at the same time, they're saying we're busting at the seam. I need more suites. I need more this. I need more that. And then you're looking around and like, okay, well, there's some unused space right here. So
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We actually lofted my office.
yeah,
So I only have what do I have? A 6 foot high ceiling.
yeah,
But yeah, so it's up off the floor. So then I have
awesome.
floor space
I love
for
it.
boarding. And
Yeah,
then same thing, got rid of
that's brilliant.
yeah,
And yeah,
got rid of a storage
if you can
room.
go high, go for
Yeah.
it. I love
Yep.
it.
Got rid of a
Totally
storage
love
room.
it.
Just put a
Yep,
ceiling on top of
yep,
my kennel
yep,
suites,
yeah.
and everything goes up there.
Up there. I love it. I
So
really do. So the real estate usage, again, because of the cost, has become an important factor.
absolutely.
Cool. All right. Any questions on this? And I'll mention this because often, to track the numbers, I know people get overwhelmed and create a spreadsheet, yada, yada. Go to upwork.com. There are so many people who can do this for you. They can do it remotely for you. They can put all your numbers in on a daily basis, monthly basis, whatever you want. Like it is, and it doesn't even cost a whole lot of money. So everything I talk about and doing tracking doesn't even mean that you have to do it, but it does mean that you have to have this information so you make solid business decisions. Like I don't know how people make solid business decisions unless you can look at it from all angles and really figure out what the issue is. So I cannot state this enough. And also, like when we take a business to the market, I do an analysis 3 years back, and we do charts, and we show the revenue per pet per night, how it has grown for every single service, how the volume of pets is going up, and we show all of that because that is a value driver for the facilities that we represent. So that would be something to do, and also show not just your current, for yourself personally, but also from a selling perspective. All right, enough of beating that one. All right, big value driver, build a team, hire, train, delegate, create some leadership structure. I don't care if it's general manager and everybody else, create some structure in there. Create an ongoing team training plan. I think Eve's got that canned for you. Create accountability. And I'm quite sure you go over that, Eve, as far as people will do SOPs and the general manager should do this or the lead should do that, but then there's no accountability and they get frustrated. So those are some things to put into team building things. And then remove yourselves as a bottleneck. Often owners are the bottleneck because we sometimes suck at delegating. So removing yourself as the bottleneck and really writing the SOPs down and hiring a team that can take some of that. This is where the transition goes from the super tired owner who just feels like it's a little bit of sometimes unorganized or organized chaos every single day, and it's because the business is just too owner dependent. People ask you 1,001 questions the second you walk in. They can't function on their own, and you do become a bottleneck. So to be very honest about that. I also think some of that leads to turnover because most people want to be a little bit more independent. So just kind of really looking at yourself and saying, how can I get myself out of this? Because once we get into this phase, the business actually smooths out a lot. A lot of the drama goes away, the tiredness goes away, and you actually feel like you can think about growing the business versus just staying on the floor and putting out dumpster fires every day. All right. I think I beat this one to death. And if I haven't, I'm sure Eve will step in here. Systemization, document your key processes, automate where possible, have an active SOP library, teach and expect team members to refer to the SOPs versus to you. And then the biggie, and these are all the big value drivers, what to focus on is controlling labor cost. It's increased. We are at a point where labor cost has come up really high after COVID. And yes, people are willing to spend more on pet care services because we were able to raise rates as well, but it's not as high. So we're right now in this point where everybody's profits are shrinking because of that disconnect between the two. So we have to work a whole lot smarter and more efficiently to gain our profit margins back. We used to talk about, and Garrett still talked about the last conference last week, to have keeping your payroll at 35%. And I would love that. And that's why I say under 40, if you go at 35, you would be a very desirable asset, and you probably have a lot more money in your bank account right now than if you're at 45 or 50% payroll ratio. But whatever that is, you want to control that. There's basically, if you look at value drivers and how you're going to get a higher multiplier, there's only two things that actually move the needle in pet care. You can chase where you can get a gallon of shampoo a little cheaper. It is not going to move the needle. The only two things that move the needle in pet care is rent and labor cost. Those are it. Nothing else really matters. It's good to get insurances quoted every year and all that, but to really have a big margin difference, these are the only two items. Rent, and this refers to if you are leasing and you have a third-party rent, there's nothing you can do about that rent. You sign the agreement, it's a fixed cost, there's nowhere you could go with it. So that's why we talk a lot about control the labor, because you can actually control the labor cost. And the next few slides, I just want to show you how much the labor cost affects, and it also brings in the business multipliers in a little bit. And then happy to discuss with whatever you guys want. But this is a real life example. This is a valuation I did 3 weeks ago. So these are 100% current. I only use real life samples. I have plenty of them. I don't need to make anything up. This business had a revenue of 2.3 million. Oops, hold on. I'm going backwards. Okay, here we are. Sorry about that. So has 2.3 million in revenue. Fabulous number. Payroll, 75%. So 74% of all the revenue that came in went into payroll. And I wish I could hear you because you're probably going, wow, as you should be. So the EBITDA on this business was, obviously there's other expenses than the payroll, was at $262,000. It's a 12% margin. It's a very poor margin, okay? So all the other expenses in this business, they were all within benchmarks, within KPIs. Nothing else was out of whack except payroll. The business got a $660,000 valuation because it's a low profit margin business model. And the high payroll just contributed obviously to the EBITDA, and then it got a greatly discounted multiplier because it would not be a super desirable asset. Multipliers are also a reflection on risk. So the lower the multiplier, the higher risk the business is. The higher the multiplier, the lower risk it's perceived. So when we do valuations, we look at that just knowing the market, and this would be considered a riskier business because there's a reason that payroll is this high. So it would have been considered a higher risk business. So it got a pretty discounted multiplier. So then I ran the math. If, let's just assume, and I'm being nice here, I'm not even saying get down to 40% labor control, labor percentage, because there's no way this business could. So I'm saying, I'm going to give you 5 extra points. Just get to 45%. If this business had been 45% of revenue at labor ratio, 45% margin, EBITDA would have been at 864,000. And because all of their other expenses were so well in line, they would have jumped to a 37% margin, which is super attractive. And now we're using the same multiplier as we used on the previous slide. The business would have been valued at 2.16 million versus the 660,000. So the high payroll cost actually contributed to $1.5 million loss in value. And then what it actually costs the owner annually is $602,000 in actual cash because the payroll was so high. I mean, that's a big number just in your own account every single year, let alone from a value perspective. But then I'm going to sound like the midnight infomercial. There's more. So if this business has, and it's totally capable of doing this based on its revenue, this business is capable of getting to $864,000 of EBITDA with a healthy profit margin. They would have received a much higher valuation. The multiplier would have been way higher. And in our simple little math, it could have been, well, the business could be sold for well over $4 million versus the 660. So I just want to use that because it's a real life example. And especially when it comes to selling, it's what we call the compounding effect of the multiplier. So every dollar turns into so many more dollars. So every dollar in savings gives you so much more in evaluation. That it's just always good to keep in mind as to what you're truly losing every day. You're losing cash in your bank account if your payroll is high, and you're certainly losing it in a selling situation. Okay. Any questions on that? No, we're all good. Makes sense?
We're good.
We're good. Okay. So what I'd like to do at this point is just any questions that you might have. I see one, do benefits and PEO costs. So benefits, yes, Jay. So payroll is what we call fully burdened. So it's anything that you pay in, your taxes, your most businesses that offer benefits also have higher revenues. So it is fully burdened number. PEO costs, no. PEO costs would be an add back. So when we have a client who's using a PEO, we add the PEO fees back. So if that answers that question.
What is a PEO?
PEO is private employee organization. They are companies where the employees would not be your employees. They've become quite popular, especially in pet care, for liability mitigation purposes. They do all the onboarding, yada, yada. So the employees actually are employed by the PEO. So let's say it's Teija's PEO. They are actually my employees. I essence, quote unquote, lease them to you, but it's not like a temp agency. I mean, these are, you find the people, you hire the people, you train the people. They're all your employees, but they're legally employed by the PEO. They get their W-2 from them, they get all from them. The PEOs also typically wrap in all the benefits. So they can have a 401k plan. Often they get workers' compensation, insurance less for you, yada, yada. So we've had quite a lot of deals where the clients choose to do the PEO route. You pay a premium for it, but often the little percentage extra, let's say you end up paying 3 to 5% more, covers the headaches of managing your employees and benefit management. And again, it's a liability mitigation for a lot of companies.
Can I set up my own PEO?
I don't think so, no. They are truly, just do a search on the PEOs. There's lots of different ones out there. I don't believe you can be your own. These companies own a lot of, like, they're not industry specific or anything like that. They will have tens of thousands of employees in these little plans. Yeah, so it's not just an individual thing, but they are truly working for somebody else. Yeah, they're actually really good. I would look at them, and especially if you hate the paperwork side and the HR side, they handle all of it. And HR and payroll has become a big litigation issue. So I often think, if you have a little extra money, it's worth it. The fee is an add back. So one of those things you can have your cake and eat it too. But they've become quite popular because of that, and they can wrap everything else in it.
Gotcha.
I actually think ADP even has a PEO. I think it's called ADP Total Source. They have a PEO program within ADP.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
So in asking something that's impactful to multipliers, the new trend with memberships.
Yeah. So PE loves recurring revenue. There's no better way to say it. So that is why we have gyms, everything, even freaking haircuts nowadays, like they want to sell you a membership, waxing studios, any consumer services have turned into a membership. They love that. It obviously creates consumer stickiness. It's recurring money, and often you get it before you even provide the service. So absolutely love it. EBITDA, you still got to have your EBITDA in there, right? So when you price your membership, you've got to make sure that you're doing it right so the EBITDA is there. But they absolutely love it. The more the merrier when it comes to membership. Again, I will use this example. Business has membership programs, but their EBITDA is a low margin, and business doesn't have membership programs. The EBITDA is a higher margin. They're going to go for the higher EBITDA. EBITDA. It's cash flow. They're buying cash flow. I don't care what they tell you, blah, blah, blah. All they buy is cash flow. So get that. However, if you have membership program and nice margins, bingo, they will love you for it. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's good from a business perspective. I mean, I love a lot of those processes. We just have to do them right? And kind of look at what are other outside of our industries, what are others doing, and why is it working well, and bringing those in so you still have the profits. And I love the consumer stickiness part of it, especially for daycare, because I do think we see consumers not being 100% loyal to one facility anymore, doing a little bit of hip hopping. And any way you can tie that consumer just to spend majority of their money with you is very smart.
Fabulous. Well, good, because I have one that I have on a membership, and I have one that's traditional. So
there you go. And then you can do the analysis between the two and see, okay, where do I get better profits and why?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
So I know another thing that people have been talking about is selling to their staff.
Yeah, there are. So are you talking about like a ESOP, employee stock owner, or just selling to like a general manager?
Nope, like the ESOP. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
ESOP,
So where they create a
you have
board
to
of
be
directors.
pretty big to do an ESOP. They're very, very expensive, and they take few years to put together. Absolutely an option, and it's a really good option for the seller because there's huge tax benefits to it. But typically, if if you have a smaller facility, it's not even going to be worth the cost. It's going to cost you more to go through the process and set it up because it's a highly regulated product, obviously. But it is an option, especially people who have multi-sites or you have a larger facility and you don't necessarily need the cash at closing, but you want to be part of this bigger picture where you get dividends, it could basically be your pension fund. I do think it's there, but hire a really good attorney and learn all about it because it's just a very tedious process.
It's just like when everybody says, "Oh, I want a franchise," and then they
Oh
actually
my
get into it and
gosh.
they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh."
Yeah. And people often think, especially in franchising, oh, pet care, I want to do more of this. Well, franchise sales and pet care have nothing to do with each other. They're totally two
Right.
different. You're not running pet care facilities, you're selling franchises. It's a totally different thing. And we hear that a lot as well. So yeah, I'm kind of like
Yeah.
focus on what you do well. All
Right.
right. I see Jay has a question going back to payroll ratio. If owner is not part of operation, is more an executive. No. So if you truly, Jay, if you're truly removed, um, look at it this way. If you were to sell, would your position need to be backfilled and leave out what we call back office, payroll, looking at numbers, kind of giving direction. If you do nothing else but then that, then you're not included in the labor ratios, neither should you. So if we can kind of sell the business, throw you away, there's not going to be a negative adjustment for your payroll, if that makes sense. Let me know if I answered that.
Is there a benefit to paying yourself on payroll versus doing an owner draw when it
Yeah.
comes to the
Yeah, the
EBITDA?
selling part. It's driven a little bit by the legal entity you're in. So if you're an S
Right.
corporation, the IRS does state that you are to pay yourself a fair wage. Now, what fair wage is can be from 20,000 to 200,000, right? There's a
Right.
big variance there. But you're also obviously then paying, the business is paying for your FICA taxes, which do contribute to your retirement. So I wouldn't cheat myself out of that. So yes, if you're S corp, you absolutely should pay yourself a little bit. I don't care what it is. If you're in a partnership and you file as an LLC and not as an S corp, you typically are not a W-2 employee, and that is when you take distributions. They don't even hit the P&L statements because they're an equity account. They show up under the balance sheet, so there wouldn't be anything to add back, and you'd be doing it right. The reason I like for owners to pay themselves something is, again, I'm all about the cleanliness of the P&L statement. And if the P&L statements you are pulling out of your system right now do not reflect the entire performance of the business, you don't have the data that you need to make informed business decisions. So if you're not paying yourself and it's not reflected in the P&L, but you work full time, right? Then you're looking at a financial performance that's probably a little inflated because the wage that it takes that you should be doing and getting paid for isn't included. Same thing with the rent. If you don't pay any rent, you're going to have a grossly inflated opinion of how profitable your business is. So I like to have everything go through the books so that you can clearly see what you're making.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm gonna shock Taya right now. Um, I do my books on Excel. I'm not
Yeah,
a
no, that's
QuickBooks
fine.
person.
Yep.
And
No, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
I honestly, it's not the tool, it's how you use it, right? So if you
you
do
sound like a dog
Excel,
trainer there. Oh my gosh. No, I'm kidding.
that might be my background. That's why I break things down and say 1,000 times.
Right, right. But yeah, no, I people when they ask me at conferences and stuff, oh, what are you using? And I'm like, I
Yeah,
use Excel
yeah,
because I'm very much I want to, first off, I have trust issues, so let's just go there.
yeah.
But
No, no, yeah,
for me, I put it in
yeah,
Excel and then I can just run my columns and I can
yep.
pull my data out that way and I
There's
know that it's
nothing wrong with
accurate.
it. There's
Yeah.
nothing. And I share the last sentiment with you a little bit. Ever since QuickBooks went online, I think they're just selling data. And so I'm like, I just want it on my desktop. You don't need access to everything I have. Again, it doesn't matter how you run it as long as it's accurate and that you get the information that you need that's not inflated or rosy
Right.
colored glasses, but that you get the true data so you know what kind of business decisions to make. But yeah, and I'm an Excel fiend. I freaking love Excel. I remember the old ledger times when we had those freaking things in the corner and we flip the page. So Yeah, no, again, it just, as long as you can produce the data that you need, and sometimes it's easier to do something simpler, because QuickBooks, as much as they try to make it easy, it can be a very, very confusing thing. And they've made it too easy where people who don't understand it really is a, double entry accounting system. People just
Right.
make a lot of mistakes, and we just get garbage out of there. And there's many times I spend a month on just fixing people's books before we go on the market.
I absolutely agree, because I'd be like, oh, you know what? I returned this or da da
Yeah.
da. And then I'm
Yep.
like, how do I do that in QuickBooks
Yeah.
and it's still showing up?
Yeah.
And now I just doubled it up and
Exactly.
yeah.
No, I
So
totally agree. So yeah, I don't care what the tool is, as long as you get what you need out of it.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
cool.
No, Excel and
Yeah,
I are friends.
I love
Um,
it. I always say I don't care if it's a personal life decision, there's nothing I can put in Excel.
yep.
Nothing. And it never lies. It just freaking doesn't lie.
Correct. Yep. Yep. And that
It's
was exactly it. I was like, I know
yeah,
that what I put in there is
yep,
correct. So
exactly.
I don't have to guess about where that magical
No,
number went. So
exactly.
super,
I
super
wonder how
important.
did that get there. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Does
just have a
anybody have
few
any
slides on
final
labor. I'm not going to go
questions?
through this. I think
Oh,
most of you
gotcha.
knows. Yeah, it's just about, how labor cost is impacted by,
Yeah.
again, market wages. We're well beyond that minimum wage thing, turnover, inefficient ops. All of this here is around the training and the SOPs. And that's why your business is so valuable to your clients, because all of this can be fixed with that. And incorrect pricing is often also the reason for high payroll. We've discussed that 1,000 times, but that kind of gets it in there. And they're all fixable things. There's nothing here that you cannot control and fix. And that's the beauty of it. And then, pricing is important. Pricing your highly labor intensive add-on services appropriately, occupancy-based scheduling, processes with time expectation, yada, yada, yada. So all of that is in there. And then lastly, just a quick, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the market. The gap actually between the sellable and the non-sellable businesses is growing. We do a lot of conversations about either people shouldn't sell, or it would be difficult for them to sell right now for various reasons, mainly because often their margins are low or their value expectations are too high to compare to what EBITDA they're producing. Revenue and EBITDA expectations from investors, these are the buyer groups, those are increasing. And again, unrealistic owner value expectations are on the rise, and then labor still remains the number one value detractor in our market. And now, any questions? I'm going to give a little QR code. Anybody wants a business valuation, we do a
Beautiful.
360 analysis. It's way more than just a business valuation, but you can get a little more information on that. And now I'm just free for all.
All the free for all.
Yep.
And I will tell you, Taya, so that a couple businesses I've entertained
Yeah.
that had valuations done by you, and the
Mhm.
people still turned around and said, "Well, I want more," and I'm like, this
Yeah.
is accurate. Like
Yep. And
it
I sometimes I'm like, well, I don't blame people for asking for more, but it's the
correct,
unrealistic side of things. And that's why I try to, the earlier in the business growth phase, people understand what actually affects value, because you simply won't sell. Like, there's so many businesses on the market. People are not stupid. Like, Eve's not going to overpay for an asset just because the seller thinks it's worth it, because, the blood, sweat, and tears, those famous three things.
right,
They just don't sell, and then that is an issue in itself. And I see some, I mean, people will call, I've tried to sell for 7 months, it hasn't moved. Like, I don't want to touch it after that. I mean, that business has a stigma on it, it was overpriced, yada yada, and it just won't sell. It's no different than putting a house on the market and you think yours is the best because it has a cute little countertop. And
Mhm.
that's just not how it works. The market dictates price, and the buyers are, they're pretty educated nowadays, because you can watch these same videos I'm doing for you guys from a buyer's perspective, like just flip the coin. And I have also found that existing pet resort owners are the most critical about pricing, because you can do it yourself, so you're
Correct.
constantly calculating, is it worth it, or I can just go do it on my own.
Yep.
So yeah, so I can't stress enough to figure out how your business is valued. And I'm a big believer in kind of being critical of how you spend your time. And you can spend your time just going day to day through this chaos and putting out fires and answering people's questions. or you can actually spend your time in making sure you're always growing the business and looking at it from a higher level. And so you know that in 5 to 7 years you have something to sell. So that all kind of comes into it as well, to know ahead of time what actually matters and what doesn't, and then spend your time accordingly. Because that's one commodity we'll never get more of. It is limited.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And yeah, as a buyer too, and I'm looking at the business, and it's like, okay, like you said, usually
Mhm.
they're not priced appropriately, but still
Mhm.
I'm borrowing money at a higher rate. I'm probably
Bingo.
adding in a little bit because there's things I'm
Yep,
going to
you
need to
need some working
replace.
capital. You got to get some fixing
Yeah.
done. Yep, bingo. And
Yep.
that is the
So,
one side, unless the sellers have gone through some process before and are educated, they don't understand that it's called the debt servicing capacity of the business, and that comes out of that EBITDA. So then Eve's looking at like, great, okay, so you want $1 million for your business. It's gonna take me, 230 to freaking service the debt every year. Leaves me book me $5,000 a year. Like it just
right.
doesn't sound that attractive. The buyers have a really hard time with the debt servicing capacity analysis, and that is what buyers do. I mean, that the sellers have a hard time with it, but that is what buyers do. Any smart person is going to do that.
No,
Much
100%,
as people hate
100%.
it, it just comes down to those lovely spreadsheets.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Mhm.
um, when people are like, oh, well, the business pays for my car and this pays for this. I mean,
Mhm.
really sit down with a tax strategist too. And that's
Mhm.
usually not the best way to do it. There's so many other
Yeah,
things that you can do.
yeah, totally
Having
agree.
a reimbursement
Yep,
keeps your books clean and
keep your
takes
books
the
clean.
tax piece out of it,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and those
And
types of
even here,
things.
like, look at, so people will run, I mean, like, the most biggest culprit is Amazon under supplies. Like, oh, only 30% of that is business. Well, no buyer buys that. Like, they just don't. And the truth is, you chose to take the tax deduction. So you saved 15% on a few $1,000s, whoop-de-doo. But you're losing, between 3 to 5 times the few $1,000s in evaluation. Like, it makes no sense. Like you're literally running personal stuff through for 15% deduction versus you're losing up to 500% on that money. So always think of the multiplier. That $10 in tax savings is a lot more when you go sell it.
That's a very valid point. That's a very
Mhm.
valid point.
Always
Yep.
look at like every dollar you save at a minimum. If you're a private buyer, you're getting a 3x. You're gonna every dollar you save, you're losing three. And if you're on the M&A market, you can lose 5, 6, 7, $8 on that dollar savings. It's not
So
worth it at all.
yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I even created, my two locations have separate
Mhm.
Walmart accounts and
Perfect.
separate
Love
this.
it.
So that way,
My goodness.
you
No,
know,
you'd be like a dream come true because you also, when you have multi-sites, you need to show profitability at both.
yep,
Because when it's all meshed, you as an owner don't know how each are performing. So again, you don't have the data to make right decisions. And also, a buyer wants to know, okay, are you selling? Is one of them a dog and the other one's good, or are they both good? So you're always looking at the profitability of both.
100%. And
Uh,
you kind of hit on it, having multiple services. This even goes back to
mhm,
that too.
mhm.
Making sure that when you're looking at the services that you offer, that you're taking those costs and
Yep.
putting it to that service, like
If
grooming,
you can do
shampoos and blow
yep, revenue,
dryers.
like revenue allocation based profit statements, that's incredible. If nothing else, at least payroll. Like if you can divide payroll
Yes.
between overnight and daycare, because that's again the biggest nut, right? And then rent, you can see how much space does each service take and take the rent percentage and apply to that. And then often supplies, they're obviously commingled with everything, but you get some sense of which service is more profitable. So here again, if you're looking at growth, see where do I want to squeeze, either do more revenue, add more profit, whatever, you actually know what to focus on. So love that. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. Payroll allocation. I think I learned that 9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
IBPSA
Yep.
had a thing. And I remember the
Yep.
first day I was
Yep.
like, oh
Yep.
my gosh, I'm doing really good. And then
Pricing
the
for
second day
profit.
we got
Yeah.
into amortization and stuff. And I went, yep, nope,
Yeah.
now I'm lost.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. No, it's the tighter you can do your books, the better business decisions you make. There's
yeah.
no way around it. No
And
way.
people get intimidated by it.
They do. You don't, and I
Um,
will say, you don't have to do this yourself. There are geeks who will do this for you. Like you can
100%.
get the report that you want to get at the end of the month and read it and get it. You don't have to go geeking out on this crap. There's plenty of people out there to do it, and it doesn't even cost much. But you do owe it to yourself and to your business to at least know the data.
Absolutely.
Looks like
Yeah.
Kathleen had a question. Is there a value in a client list and business saying sole proprietor, thinking of retiring? Okay. So the client list, there's no value in just selling a plain client list. So businesses are sold as a unit. You know, we have a facility, we have a team, you know, providing services, yada, yada. So the client list itself, there's no way to put a value. If you're like, I just want to shut my doors, I don't want to sell the business, but I have a client list. The best way to sell that client list is literally call your competitors and see if they want to pay you for that. And the other side of they're just going to say, no, why don't you shut your doors? They'll come to me anyway. I'm just being incredibly critical here because that is what happens. And the reason the client list is hard to sell because you cannot guarantee that it's going to produce a revenue for the business, right? And when we sell a full business, you are selling an entire system that's continue to grow and provide again the cash flow that the buyer is buying. But it's difficult on a plain client list because you can't put any things. What you could do is offer the client list and have an agreement. Again, attorneys need to get involved that say if these clients use your services, you get a certain commission on it for so long or whatever. I mean, there's ways to get a little bit of money out of it, but there's no means to put a value on it. The value really is in what somebody's willing to pay you for it. And then it's just kind of knocking on some doors and maybe being a little creative if you want to pull something out of it.
Yeah, 100%. One of my competitors was closing the doors, and I bought her client list for $5,000.
Yep, that's it.
Um,
And then you're like, you have no expectations. She couldn't
nope.
rep and warranty that you're going to get any money out of it. It was like, give it to me. And
Correct.
now you're going to probably hit him with the marketing campaign, spend another
Correct.
5, 10 on it. But there's probably a good opportunity that you'll catch something.
Yeah. Yep. And we really kind of scrubbed the list a little bit because I
Yeah.
didn't do grooming and she
Oh,
did.
got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
And
Pull all those
the
out.
reality was there wasn't any bandwidth for the grooming either. So yeah,
Yeah.
for me, that
Yeah.
5,000, I calculated it based on if I got so many clients for boarding,
Yeah.
that was my
Bingo.
ROI on there.
Exactly. Yep. And
So
that's
yeah,
not like whether you, and most likely you'll get something out of it, right? You
right.
always do just by doing the marketing. And
Yeah.
it's like you're not, 5,000 isn't going to kill you, and you're probably going to make that back in a few ways. So at least
Yep.
it's a very focused list. These are people with pets who use brick and mortar pet care services.
Correct. Yeah. And
That
she gave me a
aligns.
little blurb,
Oh,
so we
nice.
kind of did
Kind
a
of.
little
Oh,
co-marketing
that's
thing.
nice. Good. So she was kind of like, hey, I trust Eve. And see,
Yep.
that's worth something. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. But again, it was $5,000. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. There's
you,
no, we
you're not
sometimes get people
retiring.
will call and they ask us to value. It's like there's no value. The value is what somebody's willing to pay you for it. That's it. There's no way to put a
Correct.
monetary value because there's no continuation of cash flow.
Yep. Yep.
So,
One of my competitors, didn't have a formal evaluation done, but we did an NDA and I looked at her books and she was profiting at the end of the year around $6,000. Didn't own the building and she wanted $280,000 for the
oh, wow.
business.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, and I was like, nope.
I write a lot of Dear John letters.
Yeah, yeah. And then we met a year later, year and a half
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
She's like, "Are you sure like she's still a
Mhm.
year and a half later was hung up on
Yeah.
this." And I said, "I'm being generous and I'm going to offer you 80,000 and that includes all your inventory and
Yep. All of
everything."
your FF&E. Yeah,
And same
exactly.
thing, she had a couple family members that worked for her, so
Yeah. Just
um
gets messy. It gets
it did.
so messy. And you know already as a buyer, like you don't want messy. It's like, there's too much going on there. And you're just better off going and taking money and leasing another space and doing it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was really it.
Yeah.
So I did. I opened up a second location just
You
down the
see,
street.
that was the driver. Life's a journey. Stuff comes to our life for a reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What about the
Awesome.
business name, the value of a trademark or copyright? Ooh, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. So the business name is part of that EBITDA. If the name is just part of that big bucket that goes in on the top, so that doesn't have anything. Trademark, copyright, there's not a whole lot of value in them. They do transfer in a sale, but if you're a McDonald's, the trademark has name, right? Because it has such consumer recognition. We don't have a lot of things in pet care that have reached that level where it has like national consumer branding. And if somebody gets there, that is going to be worth. Well, the trademark, it gives a little protection, but there's not a line item on the asset purchase and sale agreement that says we're paying this much for the business and this much extra for the trademark. The trademark is going to be out of that big funnel, because the question really is, does the trademark generate more revenue for the business? We just sold a business that actually has the trademark on Blueberry Facial. Everybody uses that. Nobody even probably knows it's trademark, but we just sold it, and that was a big valuable piece because it is a trademark. It was a manufacturing company that makes Blueberry Facials, so that brought in, but it was not a separate item. It was just one of the assets that were being sold that contributed to the EBITDA, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. So if you were doing,
Blueberry Facial is like Kleenex anymore, right? In our industry,
Right.
like everybody uses it. So that was attractive to the buyer, and it also contributes a lot to their EBITDA because they sell a lot of that stuff. But by itself, they probably could have sold it to a different company, but you want to sell all of it at once because the value was just so much higher.
yeah. Well, in the dilemma, like if I have an existing facility and you're selling me your client list and your business name, like what would I do? Again, as the
What would you do with
buyer,
it?
your
Yep.
business name wouldn't be of value to me because I
Bingo.
already have a business name.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it goes. Like if it's something really unique and the owner can actually prove that the name alone generates cash flow, always remember what you're selling. You're selling cash flow. So if you're like, yes, I can prove that this alone, generates cash flow, there's some value. But in the bigger picture, you should just sell it with the entire business because it's just the compounding value of it. And we just haven't seen that in this space yet. I think it's a very good idea to trademark your names because it protects you, especially in your market. So I'm all for that, but it's not a big value add per se.
No, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, we just saw in one of the chat groups where somebody was contacted by another company 6 states away saying that it was they had their same name and copyright. Yeah.
Yeah, people literally hired. There's just firms that will reinforce your trademark. You just give them the names and they scan all the time and reinforce them for you.
Aye.
And I do think at some point, pet care is growing a lot and competition's getting tighter. So that's why I do believe you should trademark your names and get copyright. So whatever your state and your municipality allows you to do, but then you also need to reinforce it. Because we've even been in sales where people say, I have this, and then we find, I'll just use Lucky Dog, right? And how many Lucky Dogs are there? And though we have not represented a Lucky Dog, but I'm using it as an example. And then the attorneys are like, if you never defended that, it has no value, because you have to show that you're actually defending the other use of it. So it just gets a little tricky in there, but still protect them in your own market because that's what you got.
Yep. Nope. I got myself a trademark lawyer to do some of mine. So
yeah, it's not even expensive, and you just dump it on them. They do it all. You have to do nothing.
Yep.
You just get your pretty little letter. You're like, boom, done. Check it off.
Yeah. They ask you like 10 questions and then it's like, okay.
That's it. They just go for it. Yeah.
Super easy, super easy.
Good.
All right.
Other questions? I appreciate the kind comments. I'm going to mispronounce this, Charlesy. Do I have that right?
Metro Animals in Fort Worth.
I apologize if I butchered your name, but thank you for the kind words. I'm glad if it was of some value.
Yeah. Well, and it's when you're thinking of your financials in your books, it's a lot to digest. So
it is.
Certainly we will provide this as a replay so you can watch it again. Teija was great in offering to give you a evaluation and an analysis. And I will tell you that every time I meet up with you and listen to you, I learn something new. And it goes into my, I need to do that. And I'm not going to lie, that's where I just send a message off to one of my virtuals and I'm like, hey, we need to do this.
I love it. That's awesome. And I love the fact that you have virtuals. We overthink some of this thing. We just need to find the people to do it.
Yeah,
We just overthink.
One of my virtuals is an Excel spreadsheet queen.
Period.
And
We'll create a freaking hopping dashboard for you, and you'll be like
yes.
flying with it. It's
Yeah.
it's totally doable. We have this, oh, I don't do spreadsheets, I don't do this, I don't do that. You don't have to. It's
No.
pretty easy to get
No,
to
absolutely.
go.
And she loves SOPs. So I'm going to make her go and walk through my facilities and update my SOPs,
Yeah.
and we'll see how
That's
much she
awesome.
really likes them.
Okay. Oh, she will. She'll do great. Yeah.
There you
People who
go.
like
There you
it.
go. Well, I have to
Appreciate your
say,
time. I appreciate the opportunity. I hope you guys
yes,
learned something. And if there's anything else I can do for you, and I'm happy to send this deck to you, Eve, if you want to give it out.
that would be
whatever you
great.
want.
Yeah.
So,
And then we'll include it as we send out the replay for people too. So
yeah.
that way, again, they can really look at it, make
Mhm.
some notes.
Yeah.
That's usually what I do. I print out the slide deck and then I make notes of what do I need to
Yeah.
figure out? What am I
Yeah.
checkbox? I did
Get
that
some
one.
to-dos out of it. I love it. Yep. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right.
Fabulous. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
again for joining us. Those of you watching the
bet.
replay, certainly you can still reach out to Teija and ask questions. If you are looking for a tax strategist, you need someone to help you with a trademark lawyer, let me know. Dog Handler Academy, we truly want to be a resource to the people in our world and as part of our tribe. So I
Awesome.
certainly pass along anybody that I use or people that I know that have used other people to help you run your business. Because at the end of the day, you love the dogs, but this is your business. This is your livelihood. This is what puts food on the table for you and what allows you to pay your bills and live your lifestyle. So please take this information seriously. You are valuable in so many ways, and that's really, really important. So thank you again, my dear. And with that, you
Awesome.
all have a fabulous evening.
Thank you. See you guys later. Bye-bye.